know that feeling.
All
I
right,
got it.
we are ready to go. I apologize. I'm not sure it was that much of a delay because we've been trying to start just a couple minutes after the hour. So welcome back from lunch. I'm Christina Perley, the
Christina,
great. Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's still small.
I see it full screen. Do you see it full
Wow.
screen, Sharon?
No, I got the baby view. It says I'm viewing Christina's screen.
All right, let's try this
And
again.
now I see
Sorry,
you.
I'm sorry to
sorry.
interrupt.
No, you know what? Hold on a second. Let me just famous last words that it's going to work.
Just know you're not alone.
What would a virtual conference be without technical challenges?
Yes.
No, I
It's
can't. Hold on a second. I had it. I don't know why. So you can't pull it up at all, Sharon?
Let me try again. I'm
There's a
scared I'm gonna
little
lose you
button on
guys.
the bottom that says unminimize. You need to click that.
For me or for Sharon?
Whoever has it small on their screen,
Oh,
there's a
okay.
little button with a green arrow, and you click on that and it will unminimize it and it'll get bigger.
Okay, try that because then I can run it for you. That work, Legita?
I can read it. Yeah, it's not tiny. Can you see it? Can you read it, Sharon?
To read it, but I can't find you guys. Like I've lost my screen now. So I'm like, oh no, I can hear you. Can you hear me still?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Is everyone, can everyone see the screen? Someone?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you're all good, right?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay. Sharon, did you find them? Can you see my screen? Or can you just pull up your slides and work off of yours and I'll just forward it? Does that make sense? Did I lose Sharon? I think I lost Sharon.
She shows still here, but her video's off.
She turned her video. I'm sorry, everyone. Sharon said she just got a new computer.
Yes, it's a PC refresh year. Ours is coming and starts today. Today, tomorrow, and Thursday.
And hang in there with me. We'll get Sharon back. Maybe. I can't do it for her.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Can you just follow screen by screen and just tell me to advance and I will?
Perfect.
All
Okay.
right. Take a deep breath. I'm going to introduce you now.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Welcome, everyone. Little bit of technical difficulty, but we're back on track. So we appreciate you all. It is my pleasure to introduce Sharon Pattee. Sharon began her career in public health at the Wabash County Health Department in 2004. Gaining opportunities, she has served as a retail food safety inspection officer in Grant, Boone, and Delaware counties before joining the Indiana Department of Health. In 2014, she became the state wholesale trainer for IDOH, but returned to her retail roots as retail food specialist with the Food Protection Division in 2016. In January, she became Indiana's first state trainer and standardization officer for the Food Protection Division. Sharon graduated from Vincennes University in 1991. She currently seeks adventure in her hometown of LaFontaine, Wabash County, as a foster failure with her special needs American Bulldog, Daisy, and her sassy Calico Scout. Her favorite pastimes include writing true crime, gardening, and joyriding with Miss Daisy. Go for it, Sharon.
Awesome. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I cannot see my slides now. Like I went to like advance the screen and now I can't see the slides. So um give me a moment. I'm just gonna pull it up so I can see my slides from my side.
Okay.
Talk about weirdo, guys. Like this is just so strange.
I'm on your
I
mission
think once
statement.
again, we use a different technology at the state, and so I think that's part of it. I think I might be being I don't even know what.
So I'm on your mission page.
Okay, perfect. Um,
Do you have a hard copy or something you can read from?
yeah, I mean, give me 1 second here. It's new. Drive. This is something else today. This is just like a little challenge altogether. Christina, I apologize.
That's okay. If you can find your presentation and just tell me to advance, I'm fine.
Um, I did name it home-based vendors. What's new?
Yeah.
What's in? What's out? Here we go. Okay. I think I've got 20 screens open right now, so it's just like not liking it. Okay. So, I'm Sharon Pattee with the Indiana Department of Health. Thank you guys so much for your patience today. It's always a joy to get to come and join you. And Christine always offers me this opportunity to represent our program and our staff. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that. So, Christine, is the slide you're seeing right now the people handing over the box of fruits and vegetables?
I can. Oh, wait.
Awesome. We'll go past our mission statement that is to protect the public health of the state of Indiana. And so, Christine, so we're on the slide with the carrots and stuff now?
Yeah, with the box. Yep.
Perfect.
Go
Okay, I'm
from
going to
there.
have you flip to that next slide.
Got it.
Okay. So, guys, Christine explained that you guys have a lot of new people with us this year, and I know we have some regulators online, and I really appreciate you guys being here for support too. So, I'm going to start out just in case you are new to the home based vendor world, and you're like, I heard that there was this cottage industry thing. And so, I do want to share that Indiana does not use the term cottage industry. So if we hear the words cottage industry, you ring a ring, you call your local health department, and you would say, "Oh, I heard there's cottage industry." In the state of Indiana, to regulators, that just means that you haven't done your research. So the great thing is by working together today, we'll know that the term we need to use is home-based vendor. The state of Indiana only uses this term. If you call the local health department or any of our sister agencies, this is be the terminology they use too. So, what is this home based vendor? It complies with IC, which stands for Indiana Code 164253. The original home based vendor law did start in 2009. We currently have 4 guidance documents that regulators use. When the House Bill 1149 passed 2 years ago, things did change slightly, but the menu did not. And I think that's always important to remember. So basically, a home-based vendor means that you can do home-based vendor products, home products in your home using proper sanitary practices, preparing and selling non-potentially hazardous food. The products are all raised, made, and grown by individual at their primary residence. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, but I don't grow coffee beans, and I don't have a sugarcane field. But if you can make those products from things you buy at the grocery store, you're going to be good. And then you can make and sell. This was started after 2022. You can make and sell anywhere to the end consumer in person, by mail, or by shipping to the third party. That is only within the great state of Indiana. Next slide. So, so what is considered your primary residence? So
Oh,
any permanent structure that is on the same property as the residence. So a lot of times we get calls and they're like, excuse me. But what about my grandma's house? Well, when the law passed, when it changed in 2022, it defined the primary residence has to be on your property. So we just tell people if you want to sell off your property, you're going to have to contact the local health department, become a regulated entity. However, you can sell the products that you've made in your home at a fair, festival, roadside stand, event. So there are places, but you just can't go into a brick and mortar that's already a retail food establishment. So once again, we're using that proper sanitation. This is a such as list. So by regulators, that means this doesn't encompass everything, but it encompasses at least this: proper hand washing, sanitizing the containers or other packaging as needed, storing the food products safely, restricting pets and kids from food preparation and packaging areas, cleaning and sanitizing food surfaces that come in contact with food and food preparation. So it doesn't mean you have to ban everybody from your kitchen. However, diaper butts on the counter while you're trying to prepare things, my cat walking across the counter after she's used the litter box. Those are all things that we need to wash, rinse, sanitize before we moved on to the next thing. And we get these questions all the time, and it's always okay, once again, to reach out to your local health department. Next slide. Excuse me. So I'm going to be the fun police here, guys. Labeling is critical. I want you to be proud of you as a small business and be proud of your product. However, to be a home based vendor means proper labeling. Without a label, you're just illegal. That's all it is, like illegal. You're going to be asked to leave or be shut down because you don't have proper labeling. If I hear a lot of times, like, I just didn't have time to finish my labeling, I didn't have time to put it on the container. Sorry, guys, dry throat. I've been panicking too much. However, without that label on there, it really doesn't count. And you've put all this hard work in. So you have all these pies and they're labeled correctly. And then you go to put out your backup stock and those pies aren't labeled. And that's about the time your market manager or your food inspector comes by to review products and you don't have it labeled, and then you're asked to remove that product. So just make sure that all that is labeled before you come to market and the hardship is over. So I always tell people no naked food. So all food, even if it's regulated, has to be labeled. If I see something that's out there that's not labeled, I just know, and you should know, don't buy it because it's not legal, not labeled. So here's for you the common name of the product, the name of the producer, your address. We get this question all the time too. Like, but I don't want to put my address on there. The perverts will show up or something. Yeah, I'm not the pervert patrol. I can't help you there. However, you by law, your senators and legislator, said that you have to have your actual home address on there where it was produced. Because of that, if there's a trace back, if there's an outbreak, there's a foodborne illness, that way we have the ability to come and find you. A regulator's never going to come to your house and just be like, hello, I'm here, like rise and shine. We only come in case that there's an emergency or a complaint. Anyway, pretty much a complaint. And if that's the case, that address has to be on there. We can't just wait at the post office box for you to show up. So, another things people have asked about emails. Once again, like your email may trace to you, but we really by law have to have your address. Ingredients in descending order by weight. Just know that that's all you need. The ingredients. Indiana doesn't do nutritional value or allergens for home-based vendors. That net weight or volume, that changed a little bit in 2022, and the date or product when that was processed. So that's important because while regulators only look at that as quality, that may be something that for freshness, there may be some food safety involved. So with that being said, make sure that you put the date it was processed. So that's required by law. Next slide, Miss Christine. Be accomplished to your be proud of your accomplishments. I think a lot of times people are like, "Well, I don't want them to know that I made this out of my home," or "I was really trying to look super professional." However, by law, you have to put on there, and the other states that do cottage industry, also have to do similar statements. So this is pretty common nationwide, is my understanding. So word for word, guys, in 10.5, this is in the blue, this is what it has to say. The product is home processed, produced, and processed, and the production area has not been inspected by the State Department of Health. And the new terminology after 2022 was not for resale in caps. So you could never sell this product to another person to be resold. That would make you a wholesaler. That would mean you'd have to be regulated. And like, for example, like somebody buys your product and then tries to resell it, then you're liable. So we want to make sure that it says on the packaging it's not for resale. And make sure that you also, by law, after 2022, that has to be posted. This statement has to be posted on your website. So if this is not on there, once again, the regulator may, upon review of your product, say it doesn't meet the standards of a home-based vendor, and you may be asked to leave, or that product may be asked to put away. So once again, it's a great time of year. It's cold out. If you want to pull out those crayons, or I always tell people it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you and your children want to sit down and like make up your labels on gift tags to have them ready to go, it doesn't have to be printed on like a fancy label. If you don't have access to a computer or the internet, this is something that you can still do. Like, I made up some cute labels. All I did was take some, brown paper bags, used my marker, and made them up. It took forever. However, I have to say they turned out really cute, and I put it on there like a gift tag. So once again, your level of creativity doesn't have to be a lot of money. It just has to be on there. Miss Christine, next slide. So expansion and growth. When House Bill 1149 went into place in July of 2022, it then allowed you to ship your products and expand your business. So this was exciting because you could take it someplace outside of where you were selling it. So it can't go, like, you can't sell it to somebody else. Like, so once again, it can't go to Market Wagon. However, it can be put on sorry guys, FedEx or UPS. It can go through the mail. So you can ship and deliver that in a sealed package that is tamper resistant, so that when somebody gets that product, they know that it's not been contaminated. And maintain a record. So this is required also to maintain that record of the shipping and delivery, the address of each end consumer, because once again, this is the end consumer, and the vendor to sell a product for at least 1 year afterwards. However, I think this is smart business sense, because if you're keeping track of the people you've sent to, then you can send out advertisements or let them know that what you have for sale. You keeping a list, it's good for business practice. And then the state or the local health department may request the shipping records from the home-based vendor. So once again, if there's a trace back or illness or a complaint, we can follow up on that. And even though it would be really easy for this to end up outside the state of Indiana, by law, it has to be sold inside the state of Indiana. If they find your product outside the state of Indiana, the men in black may show up. So if the USDA or the FDA shows up, we told you, here's your warning, do not sell it outside the state of Indiana. And I want to thank Donna Walker, because you reminded me of that last year, and it's stuck in my mind ever since. Next slide, please. The other thing that 2022 brought was the fact that anybody that's a home-based vendor, any home-based vendor has to get their food handler. Everybody seems to use the term serve safe. Just know that it just has to be an ANSI accredited certification. It can be taken online or offline. The great thing about this is most our friends in the extension office, if you don't have access to the internet or computer, our friends at the extension agent in your county most likely offers this class, or can hook you up with a friend that will offer it. At a very slight cost, and I'm not sure you may have already covered that today, the cost for that. However, it's minimal. It does not have to be the certified food protection manager. This is just the basic safety certificate. You are required to keep that copy with your home county. So the great thing is, once again, you're not getting permits, you're a home-based vendor, you're not registering. The county can't require you to register. However, you are required by law from the House bill to actually give your certification to the local health department where you reside, where your primary residence is. And then upon request, so if you're at any market, you're outside your county, you should be able to provide a copy. So I always recommend carrying copies of all your documentation. That way, there's no question. You show up in Hamilton County, but you're from Hendricks County. There's no problem with that. We want you to sell all over the state of Indiana. However, it has to be the actual home based vendor that made the product and the one that has the certification. Carrying a copy, taking a picture of it, carrying it on your phone. Upon request, that has to be kept. Now, on the other hand, the local health department by law was not required to do a database. And so I know there's some counties out there that, when you show up at their door and they're like, here's my certification, because you're doing everything right, they may be like, oh, I'm not worried about it. Just know, just like walk away and let the certificate sit on their counter because they know they need to keep a copy and you've done due diligence. So once again, it doesn't have to be serve safe. I gave some examples here of other offered. Serve safe is the most common, but just know that you're not in the wrong. If it is at ANSI and you'll see that little certificate, the blue, um, if it's the American National Standards Institute, it complies with what the law asks for. Next slide. So, review and inspection. A home based vendor is not subject to inspection because you are not regulated. However, your local health inspector most likely will come by at some point during the summer. Some counties come every weekend. Um, you just never know if they're going to be there. And it's not because they're looking necessarily for the home based vendors. They may have regulated entities because you have people with temporary food permits. You may have a brick and mortar that's using a permit off their property. You may have a mobile food truck that also needs inspected. And then there's non for profits that don't get regulated at all. However, a food inspector doing due diligence in their county is going to come out to the farmer's market at some point and review everybody's products. And because people bought those permits, those people get inspected. So most likely as they walk by, they're going to just review your product. They may ask you some questions. We don't bite, I promise. Like even on our worst days, we don't bite. The farmers market can be lots of fun. It gets us out of the office. We're not stuck in a really hot kitchen. And we enjoy having fun too. We are human. It's amazing. So that may be the reason the food inspector's at the farmer's market with you, not just like to bust you or anything, but because they want to help you and they can give you guidance. However, I do recommend meeting with them before. If you have questions about product, always reach out to your local health department. Just see like what do I have the guidelines right? Is this a product I can do? Keeping those documents handy is important. If you are following the fermenting something and you need to have it tested with a pH meter, there's a guidance document that explains how to do that. Have that pH meter ready to go and have the buffer solutions. I know I was told not so long ago by a home-based vendor that like their equipment was delicate and expensive and they didn't want to carry it. If that's the case, you can't sell it. You have to be able to do the pH testing right there in front of the inspector so that they can make sure that it meets the non-potentially hazardous requirements. Then have all your labeling present and sorry guys, consistent, actually on the packaging, and only sell non-potentially hazardous HBV products. Ask permission before you sample. I leave that up to the county health departments. So any of our jurisdictions that allow sampling, they know their farmers markets. You know your farmers market. If you know that there's no access to temporary hand washing or that you've got a wind event or it's set up in a barnyard and there's no way to wash hands or protect that food, a food inspector has every right to be like, the sanitary requirements aren't here to be able to do that. As a state inspector, I don't know all my counties and the environments that your farmers markets are in, so we do leave that up to them. If they say no, I listen to them because they get the ultimate say on whether you get to sample or not. And then if your product is found to be adulterated and stuff, misbranded, imminent health hazard, they may ask you to remove it. And at that time, and if there's a complaint, they may have to come visit you. We don't want that. Next slide, please. Chickens or rabbits. So somehow all of us regulators have been shocked that this whole home-based vendor thing is about non-potentially hazardous food. And then part of the bill is like chicken and rabbits. Okay, that's potentially hazardous food. It has cooking temperatures. However, I don't argue with the state house. So an individual raising up to 1,000, and that's a lot of birds, especially if it's ostriches. Chickens and rabbits are not regulated if they follow the guidance. So poultry sold frozen from the farmer's market or roadside stand, and that's very specific terminology that did not change. So this goes with IC 1517, once again, Indiana Code 511 for that poultry sold frozen at the farmer's market or roadside stand and refrigerated. If they show up and you want to have a transaction with your pretty chicken, I want that chicken, they can do it right there and refrigerated. Just, it doesn't have to be frozen if it's off the farm. And then that rabbit meat, once again, 1,000 rabbits, lots of rabbits, sold frozen at the farmer's market or roadside stand, refrigerated at the point of sale, or the rabbits are allowed to be delivered to where the chickens are not. So that rabbit through the end consumer under 1642.5, 3.5. And once again, those are items. If you have questions, Indiana has the Board of Animal Health. Dr. Sir and her staff there are just delightful people, and they're always willing. If you need information on them, your local health department can get you information on that too. Next slide, please. So people are like, but what about those other eggs? So the Indiana Egg Board at Purdue University regulates all domestic chicken eggs. And we do have a new food code in Indiana that's going to redefine what a shell egg is. However, currently, right now, as we are speaking, a domestic chicken egg is regulated by the board of, Indiana Egg Board. And then all those other eggs that are potentially hazardous, they need a food permit. They're not considered a home-based vendor product. We discussed this just because it sort of falls under those farm products that would be seen at a farmer's market. So make sure if you have duck, quail, any of those other eggs, ostrich, that you go to your local health department. It is a potentially hazardous product. You're going to buy a food permit, and they're going to inspect your packaging to make sure it complies with basic guidance. If you need guidance on what is food safety, like eggs basically clean, kept below 41 upon receipt, all that's done through the local health department. And so if you happen upon a health department that's like, that's not my job, just reach out to me or one of our staff, and we'll work with you to make sure to be able to sell your products. It's not that the county doesn't want to. Sometimes we have a lot of inspectors out there. They're like, oh, the egg board does that. And then we explain, like, we train people daily. It's not just you guys that gets trained, it's us too. I always tell people, don't take hostages. Like, honestly, if they need a food permit, even though you're like, that's a weird one, I don't really know what to do. Our inspectors do not handle eggs. They're just looking for basic sanitation and making sure it stays cold. Next slide, please. Oh, and I tell inspectors too, don't swim out to the pond. Don't go out to the nest. You're just looking for the cartons and the eggs. So, guys, we gotten this far, and you're like, but Sharon, the title of your presentation is about what's new and what's not new. And so I waited. I kept you in suspense. So let's get to it. Next slide. So we're going to discuss the potentially hazardous food. What does that even mean? So luckily, if you're a home-based vendor, if you haven't taken your food handling class yet, you'll learn all about this, and I'll just go over the basics with this. So a non-potentially hazardous food is a natural synthetic. A natural synthetic requires temperature control. It's in a form capable of supporting any of the following, which would be the rapid and progressive growth of infectious or toxigenic microorganisms, the growth and toxic production of CBOT. In raw shell eggs, that would be salmonella. And the term includes the following: a food of animal origin that is raw or heat treated, a food of plant origin that is heat treated or consists of raw seed sprouts, cut melons, garlic, and oil mixtures that are not modified in any way that do not support growth under the next group. I'm going to say, if you notice right here, it talks about raw seed sprouts, cut melons. So these are no-nos as by definition on what is a non-potentially or potentially hazardous food. Next slide. So what's not potentially hazardous? So those Easter eggs that are not cracked, they can sit on your counter. Like, just good information to know. And you can eat them if you want to take the risk because it's all intact. It's hard boiled. It's not potentially hazardous. A food with a water activity of a value of 85, 0.85 or less, a food with a pH of 4 and 6, 4.6, or when measured at 75 degrees. So once again, when you're looking at those pH values and it's over 75 degrees and you're on a blacktop, it may be hard to measure this stuff outside. And then food in an unopened, hermetically sealed container that's commercially processed to achieve and maintain commercial sterility under conditions. So once again, that's your Denny Moore can. Any of that stuff that's processed in a manufacturing plant is non-potentially hazardous until it's modified or opened. Next slide, please. So where's the list? Everybody wants that list. My director, Vivian's like, I hate lists. And I get it because every time we put out a list, we're always challenged on the list. Like, it's not good enough because there's always the mystery product. So, a food for laboratory evidence shows that rapid and that growth of salmonella or botulism cannot control. That's that list we want, right? It has a water activity and a pH that are above the level specified. It may contain a preservative or other barrier to growth of microorganisms or combination, or a food that may contain an infectious or toxigenic microorganism, physical contaminant to a level that it's just not going to grow anything. So, next slide. We're getting to the list, guys. Here we go. Home-based vendor products that are in. Okay, so I want to see big smiles out there. True and tried. These things are not going to be potentially hazardous. You can all make these. And if it's your grandma's recipe and you're really proud of it, this is the time to pull it out. So baked items such as cakes, fruit pies, cookies, brownies, cupcakes, crackers, muffins, fruit turnovers, high acid fruit, candies such as fudge taffy, fruit leathers. We had to really look at fruit leathers, but usually they're dried to the point they're fine. Caramels, hard candy, egg noodles. That egg's gonna dry to the point that like by the time you're not gonna I don't think we're gonna eat the dry egg noodle. You're gonna boil it, it's gonna be yummy. So tree nuts and legumes, value-added products such as honey, molasses, sorghum, maple syrup, simple syrups with high acid fruits, no weird stuff. Jams and jellies, once again, high acid fruit and sugar. It cannot be half and half. It can't be a low sugar. We need that sugar to bind the water molecules to make it shelf stable. Wild mushrooms, at your discretion, we suggest using a mushroom expert to identify those mushrooms. However, we cannot enforce that. You are allowed to sell wild mushrooms. Popcorn balls, trail mixes, roasted ground coffees. We get a lot of people are like, I thought roast coffee had to be a retail food. If you can buy your coffee beans and roast them, you could eat them like not potentially hazardous. And you can sell it. However, that local health department may ask you to like actually pour out those Dixie cups at your primary residence, or if you're bringing a urn or something that I leave it all up to them because that sort of falls in the territory that could end up being a temporary food permit. Next slide. So that was the ends. In the I have to say we got challenged. The law did not change in 2018. However, we were challenged. Our director at the time, Krista Click, and our food scientist came up with a document at that time. And so if we're talking about potentially hazardous food, we were sort of stuck between the fact that in Indiana, cut tomatoes and cut leafy greens, because our code's so old, were not recognized as potentially hazardous foods. The original document said like not cut tomatoes, and then we got challenged. So this guidance document, if you need it, the guidance document from August 23rd of 2018, it's still valid, and you may still use that for fermented foods and salsas. However, those products have to be tested, and you always have to be able to use your pH meter in front of the inspector with the buffers, calibrate your pH meter, and do that for the inspector upon request. It's been acidified by adding acid or the action of the culture of the fermentation. It still cannot be put in a sealed oxygen container. Like, nope. It will need burped anyway. It's going to explode. Use of the calibrated meter, in the presence of a inspector, and the food would not be considered a potential hazardous food and could be sold by a home-based vendor at that point. But once again, there's a lot of steps to that. And this was just for cut leafy greens that are now going to be like matcha or for salsas. If it goes beyond that, I definitely would have conversations. And these are products that are always a little iffy. It was a big challenge. So if you're going to do any of these fermented products, I would suggest meeting with your local health department just to make sure that everybody's doing what's expected and nobody gets in trouble. Don't use the paper test strips. We do not recognize in those in the state of Indiana. How dark's dark. They get wet, they're worthless. So you have to have the actual pH meter. Next slide, Miss Christine. So what's out? I gave you the ins, said you can do a little weird stuff, and now these are going to be out no matter what. Unless it's tested, it's a no. So canned hermetically sealed containers of acidified or low acid foods, no pickles, no. There's just like I can't even get into it because as soon as I say it, like somebody will think of something else that I have to like go study. Heat treated vegetables, canned green beans, corn, fermented vegetables in sealed containers, what we were just talking about, alcohol, anything above 0.05, foods that require a water activity or pH test that have no documentation. So you went and had it tested, you spent the money, you took the time to have it tested, and then you didn't carry your documentation and you have no proof. You're just telling that regulator that, like, it's okay because you had it tested, but they really, by law, have to be able to see that documentation or it just doesn't count. Cut melons, raw seed sprouts, salad dressings, and sauces. Once again, those are usually acidified. Quail eggs and pickled eggs are a no-no. No meat products. Home-based vendors cannot do meat products. So jerky, summer sausage, dried meats, non-modified garlic and oil mixtures, wine. Once again, this has became a big thing lately. We're not the prohibition police. We do not we're food inspectors. So the ATC gets involved in those sort of things. If we're not the men in black. So I don't know. We just don't do alcohol products in Indiana as home-based vendors. Cut leafy greens, no salad mixtures, like no dole salad sort of stuff. Freeze-dried products not listed. So before we said that you could do small things such as marble-sized berries, manufactured cookies, and products such as that, and that is it. Like, that's it. No dairy, cheese, ice cream, or yogurt, pepper, butter, jams, jellies, or products, and meals, frozen dinners, or casseroles are all out. If you really have questions about the product you want to do, talk to your local health department. Let's see if it can't be done another way. Next slide. Almost done, guys. So what's new? What's new for 2024? Currently nothing. No bills came out that said we're going to try anything new. So all the prior guidance, the last 4 guidance documents are still current. The most recent one being that one from last summer where we talked about whole uncut produce is not regulated under the home-based vendor law. They got that taken out. Some of the questions that we've been getting, though, and I talked to Christine about this yesterday, we have been getting so many alcohol questions, which once again is like, I don't want to be the prohibition. Like, there's no way for a food inspector to be able to test to see the alcohol content. So I'm going to say no, go talk to your ATC. But we're trying to work at the State Department of Health, at the Department of Health. We're trying to work out some of that. So things that we see concerning that we're meeting with Purdue with right now, and maybe we'll have different answers later in the season, but currently the extracts we're concerned about alcohol content and sealing it. It's gonna evaporate, guys, because it can't be sealed. Tinctures, worried about not only the alcohol content but health claims. Home-based vendors cannot make any sort of health claim. Anything CBD related, it's a no because it's no for everybody, like restaurants and manufacturing too. Cheese bread, that guidance is currently under review. I just talked to Purdue. They said that they had somebody that's bread was okay, but it was because it was a dried cheese and it had been grated really fine. They had concerns about the thickness of that cheese, and I do too, the moisture content possibly. 2023, the produce whole uncut, like I was just saying, was taken out. So you can sell whole uncut produce. You are not under home-based vendor. You're just not just, you're a produce seller. We're not going to look at your whole uncut produce. Barbecue sauces, if they're made from manufactured things, Heinz 57 plus Del Monte, all that, don't seal it up. It's going to mold, but you can make that and sell that in a Dixie cup or whatever you want. Um, it just makes sure that you're not adding any cooked ingredients to it. It's just your acidified products that you just bought off your grocery store shelf that you mix together. Freeze dried, uncut berries, marble sized, manufactured confectionery items and candies that were approved in 2023 after a scientific review. So I know everybody's like, but what about this and that? Like, nope. It is just the small marble sized berries, manufactured cookies and candies. That's all you get. We have scientists that are reviewing these products. Some states don't allow it at all. We've made a compromise on this so far, and I do not see this changing anytime in the near future. Next slide. So mystery products. Every inspector out there, my dear friends that are on this with us today, can tell you the same thing. Like, just when we all have it figured out, we don't. You are going to come up with something creative and delightful that your grandma made, somebody's made since the Civil War, and the inspector's going to say no, and then we're going to be challenged, and maybe we'll learn something. Maybe this is the year. So reach out to your local health department on home-based vendor products. Once again, it's not that something can't be done, it's how it's done. Maybe it needs to be done in a commercial kitchen with a food permit. They can help lead you and give you guidance on that too. It may be not the way you want to do it right now, but it can't mean that you can't expand your dream. How is it processed? Like, maybe it can be done if you don't seal the bottle. Does the product have a known water activity and pH? Currently, there's a really nice lady I'm working with. She's got a million different berries she's growing, and I have never even heard of these berries. So it's not a no. It's just that I need scientific documentation about these products because I want to be fair. How it be packaged? Who is the end consumer? Because once again, you always have to have the end consumer, and where will it be sold? So once again, I can't resell it. I can't sell it to the Walmart to have it resold. It has to be sold to that end consumer. And what before 2022, you could have your kids sell at different farmers market. You could have employees. 2022 said you are the home-based vendor and you have to be the one selling the product. You can't have employees. So it's sort of restricted sales in that. Like, open up your sales, do some online sales because it's just you. You can't have employees. I hope this makes sense. Next slide, Miss Christine. The one thing I want to share, I hope I'm not running over, but it is so important, guys, that we all work together. The last presentation, she shared it. I'm going to share it. Like, we want our farmers markets to succeed and be the best and grow and everybody to just have fun at the farmers market. If you're not getting answers, everything that your food inspector says is science based. That's how we live. We live in the weeds with our science, our little geeky selves. And so we want you to join us in the weeds. Like, come to our pond and have some fun. We want to work with you. We don't like saying no. I want to build your dream. If you can't do it as a home-based vendor, let's figure out how you can do it and how you can grow that small business. And next thing I know, like, you're the product of the year on CNN. Like, I'm all for you. Like, go team. So start small. It's always okay. I've seen home-based vendors go from home-based vendor to selling at Purdue University within 6 months. You just don't know. You may have that end product. Consistency is always our goal. I know that's a challenge with local health departments and the state department of health. I'll tell you one thing, Don, I'll tell you another, because we try to be on the same page, but there's so many products. And each time we have to review, like, what ingredients are you putting in it? Like, one ingredient, like extra, the Granny Smith apple versus some hybrid apple. There may be questions. We don't know. And I always tell people, if I don't know, it's a no. We may have you test it so that we can make sure that it's okay. Reach out and gain that partner in public health. Your food inspector is there for you. If you're struggling finding the right person, reach out to your extension agent. We're all here for you. We want you to succeed. And you're like, oh yeah, those regulators taking the fun out of everything. But I want to tell you, we can have fun. We like to have fun too. And so if you have any questions, please do reach out. Next slide. This is my contact information, but I have partners in crime. So do let me tell you, like, we have 6 other staff members now at the state level. We're fully staffed. And then I think most of our health departments are doing pretty good. There's a lot of turnover. If your local health department doesn't have the information you need, reach out to me and we will pair you up with the right person. And I'll give them all this information I just shared with you. So, any questions, Miss Christine? If I'm done, I'm done. Thank you so much for this opportunity today. Christine?
There was a question about salad mixes and cut leafy greens. I think I can't remember what you were talking about. But do you remember the slide? I can't remember if you're comparing potentially hazardous to non-potentially hazardous. So if you're growing leafy green mixes, then you're allowed to do that and sell at farmers markets, but all you could do is the one harvest cut, correct?
Yes. That would be slide 18. And so we go into that goes into the guidance document. If you want to look it up, it's on our homepage at IDOH. And that is its initial. Krista Click was our director at that time. It's still accurate. Cut leafy greens, I tell people, so cut leafy greens is when like you're mixing and blending all those, you're cutting into the actual leaf, which might grow pathogens rather than what Christine just said, the harvest cut. You can't bring the field to the farmer's market. So you got to cut the lettuce out of the field or the produce and bring it. If you're making a mixture, you're cutting the leaves, shredding the leaves, that makes it a cut leafy green and a potentially hazardous. Even Dole has a zillion outbreaks. And so that's why it's limited to just the produce itself.
Okay. And then a clarification on mushrooms, though you
Ye-
can forage and
yes,
sell,
I'm
but
going to forage.
but you do have to go through Indiana Department of Health to make sure the forager has been trained, correct?
No. So, actually, industry had questions with this too. So I have to say this: if you are foraging and this goes back to 2009 document, you may forage. We suggest and encourage you to use a mushroom identifier. However, the home-based vendor is not regulated and not required to use the identifier. And if you want to see that in writing, that goes back to the document from 2009. That's still accurate. It's been that way in all our presentations. But if you
Okay.
want to have that in hand, if you see your inspector, the 2009 guidance document from the State Department of Health, actually, I think even the guidance document from last year should say that home-based vendors can sell the mushrooms without them being identified. You're liable. It's your own risk.
Right.
So
And
the
then
Hoosier
go ahead.
Mushroom Society is telling people the opposite, that you are only legally allowed to sell mushrooms in Indiana if they're certified by a state certifier, and they're using that justification, in fact, to charge everybody $100 for their course. So could you
Oh,
maybe
no.
share that guidance with us so that we could have it at the market? Because that I'm definitely interested in bringing mushrooms in this year, but I'm a little worried about it.
So
Yeah, send me email because like legally even said it in the House bill, you can sell mushrooms. What they're saying is correct. However, it does not apply to home-based vendors. It only applies to retail food establishments. They have to have approved sources, and therefore they have to have mushrooms that are identified. They have to have the tags. It's been very clear in all 4 of our guidance documents that home-based vendors are not required to have the identifier. We recommend it. It will say recommended. We can't. I'm gonna forage. I hope y'all are out there having lots of fun. It's at your own liability if you sell bad mushrooms because you're not required to have that mushroom identifier. Your market manager may choose to for liability of your market. I should point that out, Christine. Like,
well, you need
if
to
your market, yeah,
you really need to touch base with whoever's insuring your market, because that would definitely up the liability. I also want to point out to all of you is that there are farmers or producers now they're doing mushrooms commercially out of
yep,
using standard practices out of commercial kitchens. And I would highly recommend that you reach out to those and you use them as vendors, because foragers are fine. There are good foragers. There are all kinds of different foragers in the world of forage, and you're always going to be liable. You will never get out of a forager selling, a poisonous mushroom in place of morels, ever, ever,
Yeah.
ever. You will never, ever get out of that one,
I
irrespective
always feel
of the laws.
Yeah, always feel safe picking morels in my grandmother's forest. However, I have to say that there's a real close one I've seen in the mushroom identifying class that looks identical. It's only hairy in the inside. Anyway, and so if you kind of open it, it's hairy, it's poisonous. So, like, honestly, I wouldn't want to sell. You can make a fortune, but I wouldn't want to be liable for that because you're going to get sued. So, and
Yeah.
Christine's totally right. There's all sorts of spore packets, not for those things like morels, but there are so many mushrooms that people are growing in the state of Indiana. We consider it produce. It's fine to sell.
It's awesome. So there was a question about homemade vanilla extract. Sharon.
Ooh, okay. So this is Sharon being the prohibition, please. You put one vanilla bean in your bottle of vodka and you just have vanilla flavored vodka. So most of those recipes I'm seeing are like half vanilla beans and half hard liquor. And so once you take the vanilla beans out, it's still got hard liquor. You can only have 0.05% alcohol. I hope I'm saying that right. If your local ATC police officer is saying like they don't want to deal with it, it's not drinkable. Here's the thing, like your local food inspector is not going to have any way to test that. And the police or the ATC could come and measure that. And if it's over, you're going to like be in more trouble than the food police. Like, then you're just selling hooch. So, yes, you can make extracts, I guess. Once again, it's one of those products that we're looking into with Purdue University. We all have questions on these levels of this year. That seems to be the big trend. Like Kentucky doesn't allow bourbon balls. We've said no to bourbon balls because the alcohol content, but it sort of depends on the recipe. I hate to be the fun police on this, guys. Personally, I know it's not potentially hazardous. However, I think it's got alcohol in it, probably above the standards. I can't test it. To be on the safe side, if I was your farmer's market, I wouldn't be want to be responsible for having the liquor store at your local farmer's market.
Yeah,
That's me
that
being not fun.
unless you're licensed and permitted for it.
Yeah. So once again, you really feel strongly about extracts and vinegars and all those like manufactured things that have maybe even a standard of identity, such as vanilla extract. It's not that you can't do it. You're just going to need a certified kitchen and a permit to do that and bottle it because you can't bottle those products anyway. They're going to evaporate.
Totally. So there was an interesting question about hemp and CBD. Why are hemp and CBD allowed if we're, I don't really quite get the question, if we are licensed to grow and process.
Oh,
It does,
that's because the your legislature is the fun place.
I was going to
So
say,
yeah, we have not approved any of those tobacco. I think like hemp oil, like is it flour, Christine? Like if you buy it from another state, you can use it, but Indiana doesn't have any manufacturers to my knowledge that allow
right,
that. So,
right.
and it's not seen as a food additive in the state of Indiana. That's above all the regulators' pay grade. That's not like, yeah, you can make cookies with regular flour anyway, but once again, Indiana doesn't recognize that as a food additive. And it's just like, yeah, we don't allow our restaurants to use it. We don't allow none of it's manufactured at this point in Indiana. Like it's not just you. Don't feel picked on. Nobody's making that and selling that in Indiana.
Right. You can purchase it on, well, you can purchase it at stores. You can purchase it online, but you can't sell it. I don't know. That was the one I've not really looked into that. So
Christine,
yeah, you can get
all
hemp
those are
seeds.
made outside the state of Indiana and then purchased and brought to the state of Indiana, so it's not actually manufactured in the state of Indiana. That's the difference.
Thank you. I thought so. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then you can buy hemp seeds, and then you can probably get the hemp seeds that have been ground into flour. Um, yeah, I've never seen any of that, Sharon. I don't know what Indiana would do, because then I guess you could use it as a home-based vendor. But as long as you don't make any health claims, like so the hemp seeds, I know there was a note, it's for the omegas. You're right, Susan. You posted. So hemp is usually used for omega, not for the CBD, not for the other components of it. So there is some there is some different
Thank you. Yes.
clarifications with that for sure. So question, would flavored vinegars be allowed through home-based vendor?
At this point, we're still studying that. It's not
Okay.
potentially hazardous, but it can't be sealed. You get a Dixie can cup, a rubber band, a piece of plastic still at this point. Or a mason jar without a lid.
So here's a clarification question. I grow strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries. Can I freeze dry them? Can you clarify that?
Anything the size of marbles. Strawberries are a no because they have to be sliced, and so these are whole uncut berries. And
Raspberries?
that was in the freeze-dried guidance document that Vivian sent out, our director, for those berries. So strawberries are typically out if they're not smaller than the size of a marble. And
Yeah.
so yep, usually, we're still doing science. Actually, Purdue, we discussed strawberries a couple weeks ago. There may be I don't see that changing for freeze drying at all though this year. Like I don't see that any of that changing for freeze drying.
Okay. Great questions, everyone. We're coming up to
Yes.
2 o'clock. Um, did I get every question? Because you were dropping lots of them and they were same or similar repeated questions. So if I didn't get your question, they'd asked about freeze-dried candy. That was okay, right?
Yes. If it's manufactured, yes, go for it. Like, and I tell people, like, when we say confectionery, those Twinkies and Oreos, once again, you're buying it at the store. It came from a approved food source. Anyway, and then you're freeze drying it, water activity. I think, in the years, Indiana will do more research on freeze drying. We're not there, but we are ahead of a lot of states. Like some states are just saying no in general, even to restaurants. So, once we met with food scientists, we came up with new standards last year. And so I hope that helps some people out there.
Okay, so here's a good question. If you're selling individual cookies or pastries, do they each have to have a label or can we have a sign
Yes.
displayed with the same
Yep.
label with the information on a point of sale sign?
Check with your local health department on that. I find, and once again, it depends on the market manager and how closely people are watching things. I've had some farmers market where as soon as I walked away, those things got kicked under the table, and the market manager would tell me that. So it was a no. However, like if everybody's consistent and fair, I think there's times and places for a placard. Like if, for example, you put it on the outside of the jar for the cookie jar or the brownie, you've got it on the edge of the brownie pan so that everybody can see it clearly. I think, but once again, I always leave that up to my local health inspectors and respect their decisions on that.
Well, but be careful with the individual products because um the if you wrap them, then they I don't know. I guess I see what you're saying. They do need to be individually wrapped at market. They cannot just be in a pan and then you scoop them out and serve them. You do need to bring them wrapped. So if they're wrapped, you might as well label them. Also be
Yeah.
careful. There could be some laws changing with regards to food allergy. I know Indiana doesn't recognize food allergies, but there was a major death triggered by a peanut allergy, and it was like a very significantly important. This person was a prima ballerina. So word of the wise, just label everything. Um,
Yes.
there is one other question because I wanted to ask you about this, and then we definitely have to wrap it up. You mentioned in that the 2022 law stated that the home-based vendor has to be present when they sell. They
Yeah.
cannot have someone, they're a business. They're like, they register as, if they're registered as a business, they should be able to have employees. And if they want to sell like at a mark on Saturday markets in two different locations, they can't divide themselves into two different people. So according to the statement you made, the home-based vendor can only sell in one location.
So it says the producer of the food. So
Yeah,
that's the law. That's the IC code. That's not the regulator. It says the producer of the food, and that producer has to have a certificate, and that
right,
producer has to sell to the end consumer.
right.
So it's never been like that's out of our hands. It talks about the producer. If every child in your home wants to produce their own cookies and get their own certificate, there's no age on what how old you can be to get a cert, a certified handler.
Right.
However, before that requirement wasn't there, but the IC code is very specific to the fact that the producer has a certificate and sells to the end consumer. So that's where I'm going with it. If you've got your LLC, that really doesn't apply to the home-based vendor because nothing in IC talks about being a business or anything. I use that term because I encourage you to grow.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
none of that
okay,
terminology
so
is in IC.
let me just clarify this for you. If you're selling, if you're an LLC and you're selling as a home-based vendor and you're going to pay someone to sell at a different market, does that kick you out of home-based vendor?
Yeah, that would make you a retailer.
So home-based vendors cannot have their own business. They cannot be set up as an LLC.
They can if they're there and they sell directly themselves.
Okay. Um, all right. That's
And
kind of like,
we could discuss that longer, but if you
no,
read the
no, I
IC,
understand that.
yeah, yeah, okay.
No, no, Donna, an LLC may or may not be a retail food. An LLC is just a business.
Yeah,
It's a limited liability. It's a business structure, Donna. So, anybody, I mean, I had an LLC when I wasn't a food retailer and I wasn't a home-based vendor. So yeah, LLC, but okay. Yeah, I need to discuss this because I know there's home-based vendors that like to sell at multiple markets, especially like on Saturdays, if they can get into some of the bigger markets and make better money. Because they're
yeah,
trying to grow their business. If they can't do
yeah.
that, then they're never going to be able to grow.
Yeah, House Bill 1309 allowed that. It was not specific to the producer, but when House Bill 1149 passed, it says the producer has their certificate and they sell to the end consumer. It doesn't talk about employees or other people. It's the producer. So I'm taking that literally. Like
Okay.
I'm willing to like have that legal review, but I know that's how Vivian sees it too.
Okay. Well,
My
that's
director.
kind of, yeah, that's kind of important for the different market managers who are here because they're
Yes.
searching vendors. And like I said, yeah, we definitely need to chat about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once again, I'm just using what the legislature gave me.
Gotcha. I totally agree. Yes, Donna, they are working as a home-based vendor.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the question was if the employee helps produce, then they should be able to sell, correct?
Right, because they're the producer of. So if you
As
guys are all
also,
working together in one kitchen as a business, that would be fine. You just can't make it and then have your employees like the donut shop go out and sell to different locations.
right. No, but I'm saying, okay, totally get it. Okay. Well, and then the other sticking point, and we're gonna have to wrap it up. If the person who's also they would also have to be safe food handler, have their safe food handler certificate,
Yep.
or be serve safe manager. So yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, the
That
husband and
restricted
wife,
it.
yeah, and agree, Donna, or Dawn, the husband and wife team, or could be at different markets. The sticky wicket comes when you have one single mother with the kids who don't want to contribute and help to her business, and she wants to sell at different markets. So,
It made it really hard, I think, too, because what we had seen in Northern Indiana was Amish families, and so there'd be different children at 10 different markets. House Bill 1149 really killed that, and
right,
I don't like that, and I'm sorry
I
about
agree.
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. I didn't realize that that languaging would have had that repercussion. So that was
yeah.
taking it to the nth level, in my opinion. But anyway, that's for another time. Thank you all. We do have to end this awesome discussion. I want to thank Sharon for a fabulous presentation. And thank you all. I was supposed to put surveys in the chat. So let me go ahead and drop it. If you guys can hang in there just for a second and do my survey, that would be awesome. Um, Sharon's always amazing and
Yes.
always
Oh,
helpful. And thank you all for participating. So I'm going to stop recording now. So.
thank you, everyone.